So the Bhagavad Gita says, it is better to live your own destiny imperfectly than to live an imitation of somebody else's life with perfection. And I ask, how do I give words and even start this story? My transness is a story of deepening. And if I were to try to bring you along and actually give words to my journey, I would have to start at the surface. I remember the signs, even the early ones. I remember as a child playing every role in the game of house. I remember the first time I kissed a girl. I remember that I had almost forgotten because I was so young, maybe 5 or 6, that I didn't quite register what I had done. I remember this weekly ritual, a game that somebody, not me, liked to play. I was forced into a dress and my small, shaking, screaming body. Could my lungs outlast the time it took to get ready for church? Whose will was stronger? I remember being a tomboy, always a tomboy. Never a girl, never a girl, never a girl. I hear people describe coming out of the closet like it was walking through a literal door. And I always laugh because for me it wasn't quite like that. Mine has been a remembering, losing who I was, and then recovering myself. Like lost memories in a photo album. Pages covered in plastic, preserved and still aging. When I really think back to all the signs, I flash into images. I'm in kindergarten, and for some reason, the boys' bathroom. It's Christmas. I'm in a fabulously boyish denim pants and jacket set, and I'm getting scolded for fighting in a tree with a boy. There was the time I asked my mom to give me different undershirts. I wasn't into the spaghetti straps. I'm like, can you get the ones with the thicker shoulders, please? You can picture someone kind of becoming a girl, kind of trying not to be, standing in the store right next to their mother, a beautiful woman of whom they are the spitting image, and yet, despite our shared love, genetics, and proximity, there is a great difference in how we travel across the geography of gender. A distance that was sometimes bridged by respectful gifts. Like the time that my hair was braided, like those famous boys of the early 2000s, thank you, Mom, for paying for the braids that I wanted. And then me wearing those same braids with my brand new Chicago Bulls basketball suit that I got for my 8th birthday. Thank you, Grandma and Mom. This is exactly what I wanted. Or that time my mom took me shopping on her birthday. I want to believe that she knew I felt strangled by all the cutesy little shirts and skirts that my grandma loved picking up for me at Sears on her lunch break. So on my mom's birthday, she took me shopping. We went back to Sears, and my 4th grade body walked out of the store with a pair of boys' jeans, the ones with the little loop on the leg, and a cozy yellow hoodie. I was so happy. My mother had taken me to buy what I wanted on her birthday, and I tried to gift her back my joy. Picture me all dressed up in my new digs. In this image, I look like a beaming light, awake and alive, full of happiness and future and voice. Now, notice the color of my mother's gaze in the corner of this image. She looked like the sky before a storm, all anxiety and worry. I remember it all because I now understand that something happened to me in puberty. And at the time, I didn't know how to unhappen it. But people began to notice me in these strange ways. It was animalistic. It was like they could smell it on me. I remember my body softening and my chest becoming tender and swelling. I remember my peace treaty to all of this because I didn't know there was anything that could be done to stop it. If I had known any better, I would have asked for hormone blockers. I would have insisted, demanded. I would have screamed louder than that child who was stuffed into church dresses. But not knowing there were any interventions that I could fight for, I tried to make my wills mimic yours. Although I never quite surrendered my personal advocacy campaign, I kept trying to obtain permissions to change my hair, to change my clothes, to change my interests, to align with what I wanted. I do remember all these attempts to maintain my core self, and despite the changes that my physical self endured, I kept trying. And I also remember fading away, sliding into the unheard, into the unseen, veiling my own eyes. And sometimes I wonder what my mother remembers. Despite all these images I now hold, I kind of came trans by accident. For years, I had endured a monthly debilitation during my menstrual cycle. If you have ever had unmanaged pain, you might understand what I mean. For 12 years, every month, for a few days, I lived in the bathroom, laying in the tub or on the floor, waning in and out of sleep, negotiating the retching and the pain of my body. I wished I would just die. In high school, I started looking for medical solutions, but nothing made a meaningful shift. And then later in life, my employer was kind of done with me missing work, and I was becoming aware that this is something that might make me lose my job. So with the guidance of my very best friend, I found myself at a walk-in appointment at a Planned Parenthood. They took my consent, and they gave me my very first dose of testosterone. I hoped that this might end my pain-filled cycle and grant me a new subscription to life. And it turns out that at that time, I had been working just long enough to earn my job's very costly insurance. But because of this, generic testosterone would cost me $30 a month instead of the entire $600 out-of-pocket cost. And this was a blessing. Testosterone for me was originally just about ending my menstrual cycle and creating an easier lived experience. But as the magic started to work, it became my Kundalini awakening. Because with testosterone, week by week, month by month, my body started to return to me. And with it also came the memories of my own light, the memory of my joy, the memory of my momentum. Before long, I could suddenly feel so many possibilities. The same month I started taking hormones, I reached out to lawyers to defeminize my birth name legally. Soon, I was meeting others who were also experiencing transition, and hormone replacement therapy became this magic portal that brought me into this new culture. There were different people, different languages, different beliefs, different understandings. And I could feel that there was an overwhelming empathy from anyone who had walked through that door. We knew what we were doing. We knew what it meant. And we all did it anyway. Against so many odds. We did it anyway. I was really building momentum in my becoming. And then the COVID pandemic started to roll around. It made almost every aspect of my transition harder. My job closed. Courthouses closed. And when my lease ran out, I decided instead of being alone and afraid in a quarantine city with just Instacart and social media to sustain me, I would try to go home, and be with my family. I packed my life into a storage unit and drove my car full of things to my mom's, but in order to live out this pandemic with her, I would need to come out. What happened is a long story that I hate to remember. But after years of experiencing physically debilitating pain that left me retching and wanting to die, I can say that there are no words for the threshold of pain that was crossed in these moments. Picture someone kind of transitioning away from being a woman and certainly not trying to be a man, standing in the living room right next to their mother, a beautiful woman of whom they will not be the spitting image. "You want to be nothing," she said to me. "You want to be nothing." I couldn't explain that I wanted to be everything. I wanted to be all of me. And I couldn't find words amidst my heartbreak to say to her that after all these years of just us, why do you choose to temper your love for me when I'm showing up powerfully as myself? Then, there were no gifts between us. I returned to my car, my storage unit full of things, and went back to being in strange places with strange and wonderful people who could hold the reality of my transness. Grief and heartbreak slow a life down, but I would not disappear again. I started to rebuild momentum for myself, for my life, for my transition. Despite the overwhelming logistical, financial, social impacts of the pandemic, I gave myself gift after gift after gift by advocating for me and for my body. The many therapy appointments, the many interviews to prove my need for surgery, the many conversations with insurance and surgeons, and myself. After 3 long years, I received my first and only surgery, a life-saving procedure that would remove the last vestiges of perceptible womanhood and excuse me from this pendulous wrongness that lay across my chest and my life. I approached my top surgery like a ceremony. My friends treated me to a ritual of dying and returning and renewal. A water burial with warm winds and people wearing washed, worn whites, bringing me foraged flowers and fistfuls of salt, baptizing me with coconut milk and hibiscus-spirited waters. It was the most alive and tender thing this body has ever known. I was read to and prayed over and simply wished well. My spirit felt like it was being held by every hand that had ever loved me. And despite my mother's and grandmother's resistance, in some way, spiritually, they were there for me too. These were excellent moments to take in, to die in, to prepare for a new life in. And then the weeks of care for incisions and healing and sweetness. No screaming, no fighting, just recovering from my surgery and recovering myself. And while this was a long process, it was so, so beautiful. A few weeks after my surgery, I went to my primary care doctor. He said to me, "We change our bodies so that the world sees us differently." And while I wanted to argue with him, I simply sat with the truth that I did not want to be seen differently in this world of 2 options, man or woman. I wanted to be honored and celebrated for the depths that I have gone to become myself in this body, mind, and spirit, between and beyond these options. I'm not there yet, but I'm closer. And these explorations keep me alive. Before I leave this stage today, I need you all to know that I believe This life is a co-creation. No one will give you the permission to become yourself. No one will give you the permission to become yourself. But you do have the option to explore yourself before becoming the person that you've been told to be. You don't have to live inside of patriarchal and colonized gender assignments. You don't have to adopt these pre-ordered, mass-produced experiences. You can actually have something that's just yours. Living can be freedom. It does not have to be punishment. It can be an experiment where you find yourself many times over. You don't have to stay who you've been. You can change as often as you need to. Do not hurt yourself by becoming a stone that will not change. I encourage you all to be a part of this world while you live. Do not wait until you die and your possibilities for joy turn to ashes in the mouth of the earth to be someone who does live. I believe that it is our sacred duty to try.